There's a mountain in western Tibet that no human being has ever stood on top of, not because it is too high. Everest is higher, not because it is too dangerous. K2 is more deadly, not because it is too remote. Dozens of equally isolated peaks have been conquered. The reason no one has reached the summit of Mount Kailash is something that science cannot fully explain, and something that the people who have tried cannot fully describe. For thousands of years, 4 of the world's major religions have called this mountain sacred. Millions of people have walked around its base in a ritual called the parikrama, a circular journey of 52 kilometers around the mountain, believing it transforms them spiritually. But recently, something changed. A group of elderly monks, some who had kept silence for decades, began speaking, and what they revealed about Mount Kailash, from ancient texts, from personal experience, and from knowledge passed down through centuries, does not sound like religion. It sounds like something else entirely. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will look at this mountain very differently. First, let us understand exactly what we are talking about. Mount Kailash stands 6,138 meters above sea level in the remote Ngari region of Tibet. In terms of pure altitude, it is not even close to the tallest mountain in the Himalayas. Hundreds of peaks are taller, but Kailash is different in a way that immediately strikes anyone who sees it for the first time. Most mountains are irregular. They are shaped by millions of years of geological pressure, erosion, glacial movement, and weather. They look random. Because they are random, nature does not build symmetrically. Kailash does not follow this rule. Its 4 faces align almost perfectly with the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Its slopes are remarkably equal on all sides. From a distance, it does not look like something that grew out of the earth. It looks like something that was placed there. Tibetan Buddhists call it Kangri Rinpoche, the precious snow mountain. They believe it is the earthly home of the Buddha Demchok, who represents supreme bliss. In Hinduism, it is the eternal home of Lord Shiva, the destroyer and transformer of the universe. Ancient Hindu texts, including the Shiva Purana, describe Kailash as the axis of the world, the center point around which all of existence rotates. In Jainism, it is called Meru Parvat, the mountain where the first of the Tirthankaras, Rishabhadeva, attained liberation and enlightenment. The ancient Bon religion of Tibet, which predates Buddhism in the region by thousands of years, considers Kailash the soul mountain, the source of all spiritual power in the world. 4 completely separate religious traditions, different languages, different histories, different beliefs, and yet all 4 of them independently identified the same mountain as the most sacred place on earth. That alone should make you pause. But the monks did not come forward to talk about religion. They came forward to talk about something they had kept hidden for a very long time. Beneath several monasteries surrounding Mount Kailash, ancient texts have been preserved for centuries. These are not ordinary religious documents. They are not prayers or ceremonial guides. They are observational records. Monks who lived near Kailash for generations wrote down what they witnessed, what happened to pilgrims who came too close, what effects the mountain produced on the body and the mind, and what their own teachers had passed down to them about the true nature of the mountain. According to these texts, Kailash is described not merely as a sacred location, but as what the monks call an anchor point. The texts use this specific language, a fixed place where the normal flow of time becomes unstable. Now, before you dismiss that as poetic language, as metaphor, consider that the monks who wrote these texts were not poets. They were disciplined observers, men who spent their lives in silence, in careful study, recording exactly what they saw. And what they recorded about time around Kailash is consistent across texts written centuries apart. The texts describe pilgrims returning from close proximity to the mountain's slopes, showing physical changes that should not have been possible in the time they were away. Hair growth that suggested weeks had passed when only days had gone by. Wounds that had healed far faster than normal biology allows. And in some recorded cases, the reverse, a sense of time having stretched, of days feeling like hours. The texts also describe what the monks called a boundary zone, an area roughly 15 kilometers from the mountain's peak, where the effects begin. Inside this zone, the texts say, the relationship between a person's inner experience of time and the actual passage of time becomes unreliable. Modern physics actually has a framework for this. Einstein's theory of general relativity tells us that time is not constant. Gravity bends space-time. Near massive objects, time passes more slowly than in open space. This is not theoretical. It is experimentally verified. GPS satellites have to account for the fact that time moves slightly faster in orbit than on the surface of the Earth. Could there be something about the geological or energetic properties of Mount Kailash that produces a localized effect on the space-time around it? The monks do not use the language of physics. But what they recorded across centuries describes something remarkably similar to what physics tells us is possible. The texts are one thing, but the modern accounts are something else. People who have traveled to the region around Mount Kailash, not ancient pilgrims, but modern researchers, mountaineers, and documentary crews, have returned with experiences that are very difficult to explain. One of the most widely discussed involves reports from Russian scientific expeditions that visited the Kailash region. Researchers noted that pilgrims who completed the parikrama, the 52-kilometer walk around the mountain, reported that their nails and hair had grown at an unusual rate during the journey. What would normally represent weeks of growth appeared in what should have been only 3 days of walking. This is not a supernatural claim. Hair and nails grow at measurable biological rates. Keratin production is governed by cellular metabolism. For that rate to change dramatically, something in the biological environment would have to change. Temperature, atmospheric pressure, electromagnetic conditions, something. And the reports of the opposite effect are equally documented. Several experienced mountaineers and trekkers who attempted to approach the mountain's northern face, the most direct approach to the summit, reported an unusual exhaustion that went beyond physical tiredness. A cellular fatigue, some described it, as if the effort of a single day left the body feeling as though it had worked for a week. Medical researchers studying high-altitude physiology will tell you that altitude alone does not fully account for these effects. Kailash is not dramatically higher than dozens of other peaks in the region where climbers operate regularly. The specific nature of the reported biological changes, accelerated biological processes in some cases, accelerated aging effects in others, suggests something more localized and more unusual than simple altitude sickness. What makes this even more interesting is that the pattern of reported effects is not random. The effects seem directional, closer to the mountain, more intense, further away they fade. This is the behavior of a field, something radiating outward from a central source. And the consistency of reports across hundreds of years, from pilgrims and researchers who had no contact with each other, from people approaching from different directions and different time periods, that consistency is what makes dismissal difficult. The monks describe the body's experience near Kailash as the mountain reading a person, as if proximity triggers something biological, as if the mountain's field interacts with living tissue in a way that ordinary mountains do not. The physical effects are strange, but the mental effects reported around Mount Kailash are in some ways even more remarkable. Multiple independent accounts from climbers, pilgrims, and researchers describe a phenomenon that the monks have a specific name for. They call it the return field. It is not described as something external. It does not push a person backward physically. Instead, what people report is an overwhelming internal compulsion, a certainty arriving suddenly and completely that they should not be here, that they must turn back. And what makes this genuinely unusual is not that individuals feel this. Anxiety is common in remote, high-altitude environments. What is unusual is the pattern. Entire groups, teams of experienced climbers who had previously conquered Everest and K2, people who are professionally trained to manage fear and discomfort, have independently reported that every member of their team felt this compulsion simultaneously. Not one nervous person affecting others, everyone, at the same moment, with the same intensity. In 2001, a Spanish mountaineering team received special permission from the Chinese government to attempt the summit of Kailash, permission that is extraordinarily rare and had almost never been granted. These were elite athletes, professional climbers with decades of combined experience on the world's most dangerous mountains. They turned back before reaching the upper slopes, not because of weather, not because of a technical obstacle. They described a psychological barrier that none of them could push through. A unanimous, instantaneous decision to stop, made without discussion, as if the decision had been made for them. Afterward, when asked about it, several team members struggled to explain what they had experienced. One described it as suddenly understanding that continuing was simply not something that was going to happen. Not that he did not want to continue, but that some part of him deeper than wanting had made a decision he was not consciously part of. The monks say this is not the mountain attacking people. They say it is the mountain communicating with people, that the return field is a form of information, a signal, not a threat. And they say that the signal has been consistent for as long as human beings have been approaching this mountain. What is the signal communicating? The monks say, not yet. Among the most well-documented and objectively verifiable phenomena reported around Mount Kailash is the failure of modern equipment in the region. This is not based on ancient texts or personal experience alone. It has been recorded by multiple independent expeditions with calibrated scientific instruments. Compasses behave erratically near Kailash. This is documented across dozens of expeditions spanning different decades. The compass needle, which should point reliably toward magnetic north, begins to spin, to fluctuate, or to stop responding entirely as teams approach the mountain. In some reported cases, multiple compasses from different manufacturers all failed simultaneously at the same distance from the peak. Compass failure is caused by magnetic anomalies, localized distortions in the Earth's magnetic field. The Kailash region does show unusual magnetic readings that geologists have noted. The specific geology of the area, Ancient crystalline rocks, mineral deposits, and the unusual structure of the mountain itself produces magnetic characteristics that differ from the surrounding Himalayan terrain. But it does not stop at compasses. Pilots flying over the Kailash region have reported instrument anomalies, altimeters giving incorrect readings, heading systems behaving inconsistently. These reports have come from pilots with no knowledge of each other, flying different aircraft in different years. The Indian Air Force maintains restricted airspace over the Kailash region. The official explanation involves the terrain and altitude, but pilots who have flown near the boundaries of this restricted zone have reported that their instruments behaved oddly near Kailash in ways they did not near other peaks of similar height and terrain complexity. More recently, drone operators attempting to capture aerial footage of the mountain have reported signal loss and equipment failure at distances that should not cause those problems. Several drones have been lost in the region without recovery. The monks anticipated modern people would ask about this. They have an answer. They say the mountain does not tolerate human-made extensions of human senses, cameras, compasses, instruments. The mountain, according to the ancient texts, operates on its own terms. Technology that attempts to measure or map it encounters resistance, whether you interpret that as a geological reality, an electromagnetic phenomenon, or something more. The equipment failures are documented fact. Now we come to the detail that perhaps more than any other makes Kailash impossible to easily categorize. Its geometry. As mentioned, the four faces of Mount Kailash align with almost perfect precision to the four cardinal directions. The north face, the south face, the east face, the west face, each oriented with an accuracy that geologists have noted is extraordinary for a natural formation. But it goes further. Researchers studying the global positioning of ancient sacred sites have noted that Mount Kailash sits at a location that connects, in straight lines across the Earth's surface, with a series of the world's most mysterious constructed places. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Stonehenge, Easter Island, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Petra in Jordan. All of these sites are already individually remarkable. Structures built by ancient peoples without modern technology, constructed with precision that still puzzles engineers today. All of them are oriented to astronomical events with extraordinary accuracy. All of them have been identified by their builders as the most sacred places in their respective worlds. And all of them, when their positions are mapped carefully on the globe, align in ways that appear to pass through or connect with the Kailash region. Researchers have calculated that the probability of this alignment occurring by random chance is extraordinarily small. Now, researchers are careful to note that proving intentionality from geometric alignment alone is not possible. Ancient peoples across separated civilizations could have independently identified places of powerful natural energy, electromagnetic, geological, or otherwise, without ever communicating with each other. But the question the alignment raises is legitimate and has not been satisfactorily answered. Did ancient people know something about the Earth's geography and energy systems that we have not yet recovered? And did Mount Kailash sit at the center of that knowledge? The monks believe the answer is yes. They describe Kailash as what they call a control point, not in a mechanical sense, but in the sense of a central node, a place where multiple systems of the Earth converge, interact, and are in some way that the ancient texts do not fully explain, regulated. There is one more fact about Mount Kailash that requires no interpretation, no ancient text, no disputed account. It is simply geography, and it is extraordinary. 4 of Asia's greatest rivers originate from the Kailash region. The Indus River, which flows through Tibet, India, and Pakistan, providing water to hundreds of millions of people. The Sutlej River, a major tributary that flows through northern India. The Brahmaputra, one of the world's largest rivers by water volume, flowing through Tibet, India, and Bangladesh. The Karnali River, a major tributary of the Ganges, flowing through Nepal. 4 massive river systems, all beginning from the same small region of the Tibetan Plateau near Mount Kailash, flowing outward in 4 different directions, north, south, east, west, mirroring the 4 faces of the mountain itself. Combined, these rivers provide fresh water to an estimated 2 billion people. Ancient Hindu cosmology described Mount Meru, the cosmic mountain at the center of the universe, as the origin point of 4 rivers flowing in 4 directions. Modern geography shows that Mount Kailash matches this description with remarkable accuracy. Whether the ancient writers were describing a spiritual reality using metaphor, or whether they were recording genuine geographical knowledge from a time before it could be verified, is a question that remains open. But the rivers are real. Their origin is real. And the alignment with ancient description is real. The most extraordinary claim in the ancient texts, the one the monks held back the longest before sharing, concerns what lies beneath the mountain, not buried treasure, not gold or artifacts, knowledge. The texts describe a chamber deep within or beneath Mount Kailash that they call the Hall of Records. According to the monks, this chamber contains encoded information about human history. Not the history taught in modern schools, but something older, something that predates the earliest civilizations we currently recognize. The texts say this chamber also contains information about the future, not as prophecy in the religious sense, but as what the monks describe as recorded turning points, moments in human history that were anticipated and documented in advance. And finally, the detail the monks call the seed of the next world. The monks themselves acknowledge they do not fully understand what this means. The language in the texts is ancient, and the concepts it describes may not translate cleanly into modern terms. But the consistent interpretation across multiple texts and multiple teachers is that the chamber holds something intended for a future version of humanity, something that is not meant to be accessed until a specific condition is met. What condition? The texts do not specify clearly, but the monks summarize it this way. The mountain will open when humanity is ready, and the mountain, not humanity, will decide when that moment arrives. Now step back and look at the full picture. A mountain with 4 perfectly oriented faces, located at the source of 4 rivers that feed 2 billion people, aligned geometrically with the most mysterious ancient structures on Earth, sacred to 4 major world religions independently, producing documented effects on compasses, aircraft instruments, and modern technology, associated with consistent reports of unusual biological and psychological effects across centuries and across different groups with no connection to each other, and described in ancient texts, preserved by monks who kept them hidden for generations, as an anchor point, a place where time behaves differently, a place with a purpose. Every one of these elements can be dismissed individually. Any one of them has a possible conventional explanation, but all of them together, pointing to the same mountain, documented across thousands of years by people who never met, consistent in their descriptions, despite coming from completely different cultural and religious backgrounds. That is a different kind of question. The monks who have finally chosen to speak are not making demands. They are not telling the world what to believe. They are simply saying, we kept this for a long time because the world was not asking. Now the world is asking, and the mountain is still there, still unclimbed, still watching. The only question left is whether we are paying attention. If this video made you think, subscribe to the channel. Every week we go deeper into the places, the discoveries, and the questions that the mainstream world is not quite ready to ask. The next one may shake you even more.